Well, the bottom line is, I think both China and the United States right now are searching for a new strategic narrative to govern their bilateral relationship, which structurally has become much, much more problematic. More problematic because of the changing nature of the balance of power between China and the United States as China becomes more powerful, but also because of the particular leadership posture and style of Xi Jinping, who's become more assertive. And so the old form of analysis about the US-China relationship, about strategic engagement, is now dead and buried, at least since the US National Security Strategy of November 2017. But in terms of an alternative, as it were, joint strategic framework for managing the different interests, aspirations, and values of China and the United States, there is still, as it were, a gap in the way in which this is to be organized. So my idea about managed strategic competition is simply this. The relationship, whether you like it or not, is now highly competitive in trade terms, in investment terms, also in capital markets, certainly in technology. Look at Huawei and 5G and the rest. Look at it in foreign policy terms, competition for influence around the world, most particularly in East Asia, and in national security terms across, as it were, China's near seas, the East China Sea, the South China Sea, and certainly the Taiwan Straits, and ideology, human rights. Authoritarian capitalism versus liberal democratic capitalism. So it's competitive, whether we like it or not. However, at the same time, there are domains where it's in the national. Sorry, just to finish the point, there are domains in each country which warrant cooperation, like climate change, like pandemics, and like, frankly, global debt management. So managed strategic competition is a bit like this. How do you embrace the red lines which each country has, the open competition which each country has, and the areas still where you require strategic cooperation to exist within a single strategic framework, which can be managed by the people running this show, both in Washington and Beijing.
You mentioned a few flashpoints there that China potentially militarily could assert itself. Would Washington, though, really fight for Taiwan, boots on the ground?
Well, I think for China to assume that the Americans would not would be a huge strategic miscalculation. China's deep calculus is that on the question of Taiwan, that as the military gap between China and the United States narrows within, let's call it, these first, second, and third island chain, that if America falls behind militarily, then neither the US military, let alone the US president at the time, would be willing to risk defeat by going to war in defense of Taiwan, and therefore the Americans wouldn't show up. However, that pushes to one side two big variables. One is what will happen with the further modernization and expansion of the military under the Biden administration. And secondly, American domestic politics will not necessarily just roll over and say we can kiss goodbye to Taiwan's plucky little democracy. And finally, if America does that, then here is the deep problem. At that point, all other American allies in Asia, like Taiwan, like South Korea, like Australia, the Philippines, and Thailand, would say, what good is America's security assurances if it won't stand up for Taiwan? In other words, the game would then be over. So for China to assume the Americans would not fight, I think, is a very, very large strategic error.